Shannon Monaghan's To Die with Such Men is a different book from other books I have reviewed. Different in kind, anyway. In the reviews, someone wrote that this book will help you understand why people are fighting in Ukraine. But I kind of disagree, actually. Mainly because it's not geopolitical, nor is it about Ukraine's freedom. You won't read anything about the various treaties Russia violated or Russia's general history of screwing over proxy states. You won't read anything about Ukraine's history from the Rook movement or its various revolutions, be it the Orange Revolution, Revolution of Dignity, or the Revolution on Granite. Really, what this book is about the brave international legionnaires who volunteered to serve in Ukraine. This is not a surprise given the title, but it bears repeating since the foreign legionnaires are not Ukrainian. Their perspective, not Ukrainian for the most part, the book mentions one or two characters who are. Their perspective is not the perspective of people defending their homeland, and they are not drafted or obliged in any real sense to be there. Some of them would have otherwise been in Syria or the IDF or the French Foreign Legion if they weren't there in Ukraine. But rather than being there out of a sense of duty or obligation to their home country, they are there out of a sense of international duty, and the story tells the story of warfare through a Western perspective. They go to Kiev and judge journalists for getting massages, while they overlook the fact that other civilians might be doing the same thing. But what stands out particularly good about this book is the description in which the soldiers are described. While there is some slight romanticism in seeing some of them for their ideals, they're mostly described as the blunt, vulgar combat veterans you'd expect. With this comes a sense of humor, which really is the most amusing aspect of the book. Now, I'm not going to explicitly cuss in this video, but I will substitute words that are pretty close to the original so you get the idea. For example, while soldiers are gathered, one of them throws a cigarette on the ground, and the Ukrainian commander says, "You respect this land enough to die for it, but not enough to pick up your effing trash." Uh, Other bits include the soldiers calling each other gray. You get what I mean there? Call them gray. Using sarcasm with each other, using intense combat experience, or even referring to mission objectives as effing R, tar, dead. Again, you know what I'm saying. None of this is surprising, but the author is quite good at capturing this kind of crude language, where even if you don't condone such language, you're likely to laugh. But honestly, what's written in this book is probably a sanitized version of what the soldiers actually said. So just to be clear here, anyone who knows anything knows that that's only the brisk of what people are willing, only you haven't begun to touch the cuff of what they can speak a lot worse. People who know soldiers know that. Furthermore, the collection of characters, Greg, Ginger, Baby Scott, British George, etc. With this collection, the book also gives a very detailed description of combat experience. I'm not used to reading these kinds of military descriptions, as books chronicling war tend to be brief, but Monaghan writes in a way where you feel both the action and the turmoil of the characters matched to their personalities. I've heard this book compared to Black Hawk Down. Haven't read Black Hawk Down, but that's the kind of perspective we're given, or kind of narrative we're given. If you have a good imagination, Monaghan gives you clear descriptions of the buildings being used as defensive measures, particularly in Severodonetsk. One episode I particularly remembered is when they had to insert a tube in a person's throat so he doesn't choke on his own blood. They go out of their way to rescue Alexei. This is another one of their soldiers. Carry him on a stretcher, only to find that he ended up dying anyway. So these are rather tragic episodes they describe from combat experience. But perhaps the funniest episode was when Ginger was bitten by a dog in combat and was told by the doctor that if he wanted to test negative for rabies and to continue his um, combat without treatment, he would have to go back into the combat zone of Andrivka, cut off the dog's head, and return in order so the doctor can know he doesn't have rabies. The alternative would be for him to take 40 stomach injections, which he didn't want to do. While cutting off the dog head, cutting off the head with a shovel, another soldier offers his pocket knife as assistance. So he does end up going back into combat, and he has to cut off the dog's head with a pocket knife. It's just this crazy episode of how could you imagine doing this? Uh, Now, I can't give the dialogue justice, but this was a funny scene for sure. And when he returns to the Ukrainian side of the defensive side, um, he has to explain to a different doctor why he had to do this. Well, the nurse looks at him in horror, like, why would you ever cut off a dog's head? It's particularly funny because he's a dog guy who didn't want to do all this after all, but the circumstances he thought led to making him do this. He thought the circumstances required that he do this. Overall, I do recommend this book. These soldiers either gave or risked their life for Ukraine, and I'm grateful for that. They saved people when no one made them do such. What I think this book does is explain the war from a foreigner's perspective. If you want to know what it's like to be in combat in Ukraine while not knowing Ukrainian, this book will give you at least an idea. Not knowing Ukrainian language. So if you want to know what it's like to be in Ukraine fighting while not knowing the Ukrainian language, this book will give you an idea. So currently, the International Legionnaires are now defunct, and most volunteers are paired with mainline Ukrainian military battalions. But there was a time when they had a separate union, and this book tells their story. In any case, if you like this video, please like, share, or subscribe. Take care.